In this season of 6 months to 6,000, I help my friend Carter grow to 6,000 subscribers on YouTube in 6 months. Let's check it out. What's up? What's up? Jeff Dolan here with Carter C. Sitterson Jr. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is round 2 for us. So we just got back from the Craft and Commerce Conference in Boise, Idaho, where we tried to record this in person live. I'm going to put some B-roll so you can actually see that we attempted this after breakfast before the conference. Then we got our minds blown by the conference and all the cool people we saw there. And so now this whole episode is going to be different. So that's kind of cool.
Totally different. And I was biting my tongue to let you finish that intro because you're 100% right. It is 100% different than what it was when we shot in Boise. And, that's the whole point of what we're doing here, is that we're learning as we go. And we hope that other people will learn along with us.
Right. And what are we learning? We're learning how to do this YouTube thing, create content, be content creators, and grow our channel. And we are going to take you, the viewer, along for the ride. So the first thing I learned is use headphones when you shoot video, because if the video is bad the entire time you're shooting the video, you got to know that pretty much.
All right.
So just because you're experienced doesn't mean you know what you're doing still.
All right. So I will chop you down at the knees because we're friends for 20 plus years. And I will say what we learned 20 years ago or 15 years ago in India when we were shooting video, and what we learned a few days ago in Boise is the same thing, is that we're even though we know in theory what is the way to do it, we still have to budget in the time to do like a dry run or like a B-roll. Like right. My experience and your experience shooting film, and my experience in Wilmington shooting, on films and TV shows, like they do dry runs. Like it takes an hour plus to shoot or to change the way, the video or the perspective,
the camera,
and so they've got to get the lighting right, they've got to get everything right. Like it just takes time, and so to run out there and say, okay, we're just going to shoot this and like expect it to work is sort of silly.
We were like 1 hour, let's just shoot this. Well, this is kind of a fun. We were talking, and it's like. You basically like, all right, man, like you help people with marketing and social media, and you're totally. CEO of Wave, and like, let's see what you got, man. Why don't you help me grow my channel? And we said, why don't we pick an ambitious goal of 6,000? And it's like, hey, can we do it in 6 months? Knowing right. that we're going to have challenges, you're going to have all sorts of life changes happening soon. And it's one of those things where it's like, all right, let's put this to the test and see what we got, and do it publicly, be vulnerable and say, hey, we're going to do this every week. We're going to film, and we're going to get on this call, and we're going to say, all right, what did we do? How's our channel doing?
Totally.
How's it growing? What tactics do we need to do next? And if you're following along, you can do them with us or do them better, right?
Yes. So who's more vulnerable, you or me, right? We're both vulnerable. I'm going to share my channel's subscriber list, watch hours, how to monetize my channel, or my goal, or my steps to monetization. I was looking at that earlier, and tomorrow morning I will, which when this airs, it will probably be, past tense, but right now we're recording this, and it's like, I will check, and it will be July 1st, and it will be for June 30th and past. And at this point, a day before, I have 464 subscribers. I have like 180 some watch hours. And sadly, because I checked it before we went live or before we recorded this, like I have apparently whatever I did 364 days ago was a big watch hour and view. So I'm actually going to lose watch hours and views, like a fair amount. So tomorrow,
it only counts a year.
Yeah, for 365. So like when you're talking about like a year. And so because, and the reason why I say that is because for YouTube to monetize, they look at the last 12 months. And so, watch hours count. So I'm going to lose like, I don't, 5 or 7 hours of watch time from.
It's okay. We're starting over, man.
No, but exactly. But that's what I'm trying to say for the viewers. It's like, it's not like I'm starting from, you know, I'm almost there. Like I'm actually losing as we speak.
Right.
And I've got to restart, which in some ways we talked about privately is more difficult because when you pivot, you have to build in, you're going to lose a certain amount of subscribers and whatever, because they're just like, we're not into your pivot. Like we don't really care. We don't really care about you.
Right. Well, and I think that's natural, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about, you know, how did you get to 0 to 460 something, right? Like how did you get there? And then, you know, briefly go through that, and we will kind of talk through, you know, some of your obstacles, what your goals are, what's at stake if you don't hit your goal, and then we'll talk about some next steps, that homework for next week, that we can be working on.
No, cool. So first of all, shout out to the United States of America, right? Just want to, I get that there's Iowa seems to have a very shiny spot on it, but I get it. So big fan of geography, and I thought this was going to be cool as a backdrop, but maybe not so much. We'll work on that. I will be moving over the next 4 weeks, and in the next 8 weeks or so, I will be having my first child. So there's going to be a lot of changes in my life. But the whole point of this challenge is to stretch myself, my goals. You know, Jeff is a buddy of mine from college, 20 plus years, which seems weird to be like, hey, we've been friends for 20 years. Yeah, I mean, I started the House Husband Diaries 3 years ago, and I did it for 4 months every day, and then I shut it down, basically. I restarted it for a little bit. I did some other small, really tiny videos, but basically, when the pandemic hit in 2019, I shut it down, March of 2019. So I did December of 2018 to March of 2019, April of 2019, and that was it. And I grew the channel from nothing to about 540 subscribers in 4 months, something like that. And then when I stopped because of the pandemic, it, you know, lost 70 or so subscribers, and I really haven't done a whole lot with it. And I said, you know, like I really want to do this. I enjoyed it. What I decided to start with was 2 things. One, I'm a house husband, which is why it's called the House Husband Diaries. I thought it would be funny because house husbands aren't really the alpha go-getter type, and so if you're married to like an alpha woman, you're a house husband. But I feel like I'm sort of like a half alpha, half beta kind of guy. So, you know,
you're very balanced.
Yeah, I'm a balanced guy. I'm very, you know, tofurkey. And anyway, so I was like, you know, it's kind of funny, and I'll talk about life as a house husband, and I didn't know what I was getting into as a house husband. Like I have a master's degree, and I managed a whole bunch of people in a venture-backed startup in Charleston, South Carolina, and then I sort of kind of quasi-retired, and then I like started the House Husband Diaries. It was just kind of a weird thing. I didn't really have like a target market. It's not like a thing. And I was like, hey, I'm going to just share my life on YouTube, and then I'm also going to do videos on this treasure hunt. And the treasure hunt was a multi-million-dollar, or at least $1 million treasure that was hidden in the Rocky Mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. This guy, Forrest Fenn. The book was The Thrill of the Chase. And 4 months into my YouTube channel, my wife asked me to stop, and then 2 months, 3 months later, I wasn't doing any videos. The treasure was found. And so then she was like, you should restart your channel. And I'm going, I don't really know what to pivot to. I was kind of just joking.
Well, COVID. So yeah, I mean, COVID,
Totally.
she's a surgeon, right? So when COVID hit,
Totally.
she was not going into the office. And so she basically was like, hey, can you stay home? And, you know,
Hang
I've
out.
been gone at medical school, and
Yeah.
right. So like you chose family over, you know,
Yeah.
YouTube, which was great.
Yeah, it's good,
right?
good house husband.
And then, but restarting it was hard,
Yeah,
right? Which I think
pivoting.
a lot of people struggle with.
100%, which is why we're doing this series, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, starting is hard, period, right?
100%.
Like you start a channel from nothing, and you did really good by doing it every day for a while. That was huge. And that's super hard to pick, like, what am I going to talk about? What's the content? How often am I going to do it? Like, what's the name of it? Like, all that. And then you lost momentum, and, you know, life happened, and COVID wrecked a lot of stuff, but a lot of people thrived during COVID because they were home and they were like, hey, I got all this free time.
Oh, 100%. And so COVID really was an inverse for me. COVID was an opportunity to spend time with my wife and my family that I hadn't had in the past 7 or 8 years, because she had been working all the time with residency and fellowship and medical school. And so what you said is, I think, important as we kick this off, is starting a channel, like starting the House Husband Diaries in 2008, December of 2018. My goal was to get 1,000 subscribers at some point to monetize. I wanted a penny check, just 1 cent, just to like prove that I had monetized. Like, that was it. It wasn't about the money. It was about like, hey, people are watching your stuff and subscribing. And so you're adding value to somebody's life, or 1,000 people's lives. And
that's still the standard now,
it's
right?
still,
like you have to have 1,000 followers and 4,000 watch
yeah,
hours.
it's still the standard, but it wasn't really like, I wasn't like, I need to do this by X date. I was just, for me, I just was like, let me put out a video every day. Because I need to, and we've talked about this because we're friends, but I look at the world of creators as creators and consumers. And if I'm honest, I'm a massive consumer.
We all
well
are, to some extent.
to some,
I'd say like 1% of the creators don't consume anything.
yeah,
It's very rare.
it's very rare. But if I'm left to my own devices, I will consume like a mofo. Like, I will watch YouTube. I will watch, Amazon Prime. I will, whatever it is. I will watch sporting events. I will watch and so I'm a learner. Like, and it's
Lifelong
yeah,
learner.
it's not a bad thing. It's just, that's kind of what I've been taught. And so I'm just like, I take in all of this information, and then at some point you go, how do I organize what I know and then share
Give it back.
Yeah. And then start to be a creator. Hold on.
So let's get into it. So you basically tried to, you recognize that, okay, I stopped the channel.
Right.
I'm doing family, but then when she went back to work and your wife was like, all right, go ahead and go back and do your channel, you were kind of stuck because the treasure hunt, treasure was found.
Right.
The very small community of treasure hunters that were watching you and the
Yeah.
other leading, treasure hunters kind of, went on to different things, and you were debating like, okay, where do I go next? What do I do? And what were some of your blocks that
Oh
prevented you?
man.
Because I know a lot of people watching probably
Yeah, a
had similar
lot of
ones.
blocks. A lot of blocks, not just one. So I mean, like you said, so first off, I stopped the channel in March, and first week of June of 2019, the treasure was announced that it was found. And so right off the bat, you're like, oh man, like, what are you going to do? So I had 4 days a week that I was doing the videos about the treasure. And then 3 days a week, I was doing other things. So, stories of my life. I worked for Morgan Stanley. I worked in youth ministry, construction, done a lot of things, got a master's degree in accounting, like, just sharing my broad array of experiences. I was going to say skill sets, but let's be honest, like, it's not necessarily skill. It's just is there. But and so I was interested. I'm interested in sports. I'm interested in investing, in money, in the economy, in politics, like all of these like broad areas. And then how do you just focus down into something? So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this treasure hunt one, and then I'll do just random videos on other stuff throughout, because I knew that at some point I'd have to pivot whenever the treasure was found. I just wasn't expecting it to be found when I stopped the channel. I know. I was like, I'm going to get to 1,000. I'm going to make a channel that makes money, that monetizes, and then it'll get found and whatever. Maybe I'll be the one that found it and I'll make $1 million, and who knows. But that didn't happen.
But you're going to do a video on that because didn't they have litigation? Like all these treasures, when they get found, there's like all this legal battle
It's
stuff
been
that
two.
happens
It's been
to
2
try
years.
to.
It's been 2 years, and it
Right.
just ended up.
What a
So
mess.
I would tell you, because this is going to go on your channel, not mine. And I will share this link with people that follow me. But I actually have been reaching out today with people from the chase, and I said, hey, like, it's been 2 years, and I want to do like a kind of a wind down, like, hey, like, like, hey, like we yeah, like a retrospective. Yeah. Like we had a community, like we met people online all over the country. Like it was really cool.
All right, so we've been to the Craft and Commerce conference. We've had some time. It was interesting because we heard from a lot of really great speakers and influencers, and so I think before when we shot, we had a certain conversation, and now that we're
Totally.
after it, it's kind of a slightly different conversation. So why don't you share kind of what your thoughts are now on what do you want to do with the channel, and what are some of your goals?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the goal, because this is the series, right? 6,000, 6 months to 6,000. We listened to a talk from a guy. Do you want me to say the name?
Yeah.
All right. Sam Parr, thehustle.co, and My First Million podcast.
Yep.
And he was like, so he it's slightly different, right? He was talking about building an email list, but he was like, I had like 100,000 first year, and here we are, like six months to 6,000, So I was like, Jeff, bro, do we need to up this 6 months to 60,000? Like, well, but is it easier to build an email list than it is a YouTube subscriber list? And so there's two different things there.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I talked to Sam, I interviewed him for the Wave podcast and asked him, what's the hardest platform? And he said growing a podcasting audience.
There you go.
So I think, growing a YouTube audience is probably harder than growing an email list.
There you go.
But the tactics that he was using were very much find the biggest trend that's happening and piggyback off of it,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
And tell stories that are so ridiculous or amazing or awe-inspiring that you have to click it to see what's going on. And I think that's going to be part of our lessons, kind of moving forward as we go through, week to week, as you get the train moving of content, right? And then we start steering it and honing it in. Like your channel, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but like your channel may use some of those strategies, right? And I think that is a very good engine to get eyeballs and get followers and subscribers. But it doesn't work for everybody, right? Like depending on what your topic is and how you're doing it, it is a tool in your belt for sure. But that was his way of really doing it, and there's different ways of doing it.
I think he mentioned like three ways of writing content because he's a writer, and it was from the heart, and then finding something that was trending, and then finding a unique perspective. And I think that was the big thing for me was perspective. And so it doesn't really matter whether it's trending or not. I mean, he would argue it probably does because that was his talk. But, we all have our own perspective. And so that's something that anybody can take away from that and say, hey, like I have a unique perspective. I have a unique work history. I have a unique education history. You have one too. Everybody has one. And so you go, okay, like what is my perspective? And then to value that perspective, because that's really hard for me to say my perspective is valuable or like I should put it out in the ethos. And he was just so nonchalant. He was like, and then you just write it and you just put it out there. And I was like, why would anybody care? And then he was honest and he was like, nobody cares. Like nobody cares about you until you're somebody.
Right.
And I was like, well, that just, ruffles all my feathers because I'm somebody. But it does for you. It's fascinating. And so he's just kind of like, like you don't really get to write these things or talk about these things until you've reached a certain level. And so then you just do this but you just find the trends and put it out there. So I was like, man, but like perspective is really interesting. And it wasn't just Sam. It was the other speakers too, that everybody, whether they said it verbatim or not, they just had a different perspective on life. And they shared it, and it connected with people.
Right.
And so my big takeaway post conference was perspective. And so what is my perspective on things? And my perspective is part of my art, part of who I am, and it's part of what makes me me. And that's part of what the channel is a different perspective that nobody else has. And it's not a target market per se. It's I'm sharing my perspective, my experiences, and there are untold numbers of people who are dying to know what that is because they've never experienced that. They've never worked for Morgan Stanley. They've never built houses. They've never been to India. They've never done whatever it is that I've done or you and I have done together. And they want to know, and they're curious, and that's a target market.
One of your goals that you said before was you wanted to build a community, right?
Yes.
So I think that's a huge goal. So validating your perspective, validating, giving back, right? Like you've consumed all this content, you want to give back, you want to help people, but you want to help them in the context of a community, right? And there's no competition on Carter, right? Like there's no competition. You're yourself. You can be yourself. You've said many times over our friendship that if you could figure out a job to do, it would be just to be yourself.
Yeah.
And at no other time in history can you make money at being yourself.